We had, or you had Baker as yours. Mine was actually a guy you just mentioned, Ryan Tannehill. And I think he's actually been getting a lot more praise recently. So obviously the Titans traded for Julio Jones. He has Julio Jones and AJ Brown right now. Maybe the best receiver duo in the league. We'll see. We'll debate that in a little bit. But I think he's been heavily underrated. So obviously he started his career with the Dolphins, made the playoffs once off the back of Jay Ajayi just being an absolute monster that season and him being a solid quarterback. And then he fizzled out there. He gets traded to the Titans, and he was the backup to Mariota, and they're 500 like halfway through the year. He comes in, and they make the playoffs, and this was all in 2018, 2019. And they made a deep run. They went to the AFC Championship game, lost to the Chiefs, but he was the main reason that their offense their team went from average to over the hump. Now, their offense is mainly predicated on Derrick Henry. That's matter of fact. But going the jump from Mariota to Tannehill it's night and day. He was significantly better, and the main reason they did make the jump from like an average team to an above average team. And then I think you kind of mentioned it with Baker, but the efficiency with Tannehill. So obviously, as I mentioned, they do a lot of stuff with play action, and that's their main bit of the passing game. Their schemes: hand the ball to Derrick Henry, have him do his thing because he's one of the best running backs, and then go play action off of that and have people run deep crossers. And I think the fact that Julio said he wants to go to a team that has a quarterback who can unload the deep ball, and then he's going to the Titans makes so much sense because imagine a play action where you have AJ Brown, running across the middle, and then, going past your safety is going to be Julio Jones. So that's wild. It's going to be fun to watch this season. But yeah, I'm big on Tannehill, and the whole efficiency thing is where you see it in how accurate he is because his efficiency stats are among the best.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he's wildly underrated. And I really saw this when Julio first got traded. I tweeted this out because I saw a lot of people on Twitter saying, oh, Julio wanted to go to a down the field passing offense, and then he goes to Tennessee. Well, they have one of the best down the field throwers in the NFL in Ryan Tannehill. He is so accurate throwing down the field. And everyone says, yeah, their offense is predicated on Derrick Henry. But guess what? When they do throw the ball, because they have Derrick Henry, they're throwing the ball down the field. It's play action, and they're throwing the ball 15, 20 yards down the field. And Ryan Tannehill is so accurate ripping crossers, as you mentioned, to A.J. Brown and Corey Davis. He has an incredible deep ball. I think it was versus Jacksonville last year when he uncorked like a 60-yard bomb.
It was 60-something, to A.J. Brown.
A.J. Brown in stride, as good of a throw as you'll see. One that if, a Josh Allen or a Mahomes made, it would be trending through Twitter because of given the situation. That was late in the game against a team they probably should have beat, yes, but it was a close ball game, and they won that game because Ryan Tannehill made a ridiculous throw. And so I think that Ryan Tannehill is easily one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. I think he's a top 10, top 11 quarterback in the NFL, to be honest with you. I think that his perception gets hurt a little bit by his Miami days. But the funny thing about his Miami days is that he was actually good in Miami. Like, nobody gave Adam Gase the flack that they gave when Sam Darnold was with Adam Gase. But Ryan Tannehill and Adam Gase made the playoffs together, and then he partially tore his ACL. They didn't let him have surgery. And then he fully tore his ACL, didn't trust his health. Miko Grimes was constantly tweeting about Ryan Tannehill being bad. So the perception surrounding him was that he was bad, but he was a really solid player in Miami. And then you put him into a situation that suits him in Tennessee, and he turns from a solid player to a really, really, really good one. And so I never understood the conversation around Ryan Tannehill, to be honest. Miami thought so highly of him. They paid him like a franchise quarterback. Ryan Tannehill's contract was one of the bigger talking points in like the NFL in 2015 and 2016 and 2017. People were like, wow, you paid Ryan Tannehill that much? But now looking back, like, yeah, they should have paid Ryan Tannehill that much, and they should have never gotten rid of him. He's a really good quarterback. And yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think he's wildly underrated. And I think that we're going to see him have another great season with Julio Jones and A.J. Brown next season.
And I think you brought it up too with like the perception of him, because everyone just looks at the Titans, they're like, oh, this is Derrick Henry's team. That's the only reason they are good. And that could not be farther from the truth. I mean, obviously Mariota is not a starting quarterback in the league anymore, but he's one of the highly sought after backups. And that you could have a worse quarterback situation, I guess is what I'm saying here. And they were a 500 team, and their offense wasn't running as efficiently. And I guess that's where I would say being able to pass the ball as well as they were with Tannehill helps Derrick Henry a ton, just as much as Derrick Henry's rushing ability helps set up the play action for Tannehill. So it's a give and take on both ends, and they both help each other a lot. So I think that perception is hurting him. The only thing I guess with me that I guess maybe is hurting his perception also that I can't argue against is in the playoffs and what he really did, I guess. So 2019 against New England, he only had 15 pass attempts and 72 yards. And then the next week against Baltimore, when they won by a lot, they were up the whole game, but he only had 14 pass attempts for 88 yards. So that's where you kind of think, okay, he just hasn't really done it in the playoffs yet. And I don't know if it's fair to hold that against him, but that I think is another reason why maybe you don't hear him talked about as much as some of the other quarterbacks, because he really hasn't done anything crazy. I mean, his most passing yards is 209 against the Chiefs, and then last year he had 165. So you really struggle to argue for him in that sense. But overall, I still think he's very underrated, and I guess same with Baker. He needs to do it in the playoffs to get more respect from others.
I think the playoff thing is fair. The one thing I'll say about the playoffs is that I think that Arthur Smith is a little overrated from the standpoint of he has a good scheme, but it's a it's a little more simplistic outside of the red zone in the sense that they have 2 or 3 very, very standard plays that they consistently go to, whether it's their run game with Derrick Henry, which is really just they go to one run, which is the inside zone with this split action. And then they have Ryan Tannehill, obviously off play action, and they use a concept that's a go and a crosser, and they constantly do that. And Derrick Henry sucks up the linebackers, and Ryan Tannehill is really accurate. But I think that here's my biggest thing with the Ryan Tannehill conversation with Derrick Henry, like you mentioned. Derrick Henry averages like half a yard more per carry when Ryan Tannehill is under center compared to Mariota. So Derrick Henry went from a guy who was a good running back, who was a limited running back. If you remember, the perception of him surrounding Mariota was like, yeah, he's a pretty good runner, but he gives you nothing as a receiver and all of that. You insert Ryan Tannehill at quarterback, and now Derrick Henry's an MVP candidate. So it goes both ways. Obviously, Derrick Henry is an elite player and one of the best running backs in the NFL, but Ryan Tannehill is also a really, really good quarterback. That's why they're able to help each other out, just like you mentioned. And I think the playoff thing is fair. I think it'll eventually get better.
Yeah,
I think one of the things that hurt him, especially last year, was that they weren't a team built to drop back in the pass game.
No.
Obviously, Isaiah Wilson, losing Jack Conklin hurt. Isaiah Wilson was a bust. Taylor Lewan was hurt last year, so their offensive line wasn't great in pass protection. They were a decent run blocking offensive line. Obviously, Roger Southhold is a mauler, but they weren't great in pass protection. They only had 2 receivers that you can really rely on, of which Corey Davis is a really, really good player. But A.J. Brown, to me, is the only guy that you could have looked at on that team and said he's going to consistently win against man coverage. So that hurt them in the drop back pass game. And then finally, I just felt like schematically, like they didn't do the best job in the drop back pass game. So I think all of those things will improve gradually as the Titans get better. Obviously, Julio is going to help that a lot. Taylor Lewan coming back is going to help that out a lot. And then A.J. Brown because he played with 2 sprains. He played with injuries on both his legs. Yeah. Last year, and him being healthy, I mean, he was a monster last year, so him being healthy will help that too.
Yeah, and this will be a huge year for him because I don't really think there's much excuses. I guess I think the pass protection thing, I'm glad you brought that up because that was something that their offensive line isn't the best at pass protection. It's kind of similar in a sense to it's not as bad as the Vikings, but it's similar in the sense that they're a lot better at run blocking than pass blocking. And I mean, even watching the Packers game, the pocket was just I mean, it would just collapse very, very quickly. So he'd have to get the ball out, and he played a poor game. But that'll happen if you're got a bunch of dudes in your face trying to kill you. So it'll happen. But yeah, that I guess bottom line is I think Tannehill's very underrated, and this season he'll definitely prove it. And he had a big upgrade at receiver, so he has Julio and AJ Brown, which is going to be insane, and hopefully some more health on the offensive line this year. But yeah, that is the most underrated quarterback. So again, I said Tannehill. Vish had Mayfield.